Hey guys, it's Sebastian from AskSebby, and today we are going to look into every personal variation of the American Express Platinum card. The last time we did one of these videos was back in 2017, and some things have changed, and also one of the cards have disappeared. For this video, we will be looking at the pros, the cons, the differences, and also some of the superpowers of each of the cards, and then talk about towards the end who each of these cards are good for. For this video, we will be using a spreadsheet to look at the information, so if you do want to skim it while listening to me talk about it, go to the blog post down below and you can see an overview of all the information. Also, before we dive in, if you like videos like this, give it a thumbs up. Starting from the top, we will be looking at the regular card, also known as the vanilla card, the Ameriprise one, Charles Schwab, Morgan Stanley, as well as Goldman Sachs. The big first question obviously is who can get these cards and also how do you go about getting them? So for the regular one, there's not really any specific rules. If you want to apply for it, you can. For the Ameriprise one, same idea, you basically apply through their sites. I'll also link to stuff in the blog post if you want an easy way to kind of click through stuff for links, because some of them are a bit more obscure. This one technically requires a relationship if you look at the terms and services, but based off data points, it's not something that's been enforced. So typically I'd recommend looking into the terms of service as the right answer first, and then afterwards looking to see if there's any data points. Superseded was the word I was looking for, but something that says otherwise. For the Charles Schwab one, since it is a relatively easy requirement, I don't think really anyone has tested this to see if you need that relationship. So you could easily open up that brokerage account and put in $100, and we've talked about it before. It's that brokerage checking account that is probably one of the best checking accounts. Just do that, that way you're secured. For the Morgan Stanley one, you do need to have one of their accounts, and if you do not have the minimum balance in that account, they'll close that account. They'll tell American Express will close your Morgan Stanley card, and then if you have had the card for less than 12 months, they will claw back the bonus or just not give you a bonus. There's a few data points about this, so if you are someone who is not able to maintain $5,000 in that account, I probably wouldn't do that whole strategy because it doesn't make sense. I would only do it if you can maintain that card and that account for at least 1 year. One question you might have is what would happen if you ended up doing that, you used the points and then they clawed back, you would actually have a negative balance. And there are some people who have negative balances. That basically means that your future bonuses are going to be paying off that debt. For Goldman Sachs, there's a relationship requirement and you can't apply for the card unless you have a specific link. So I think you have to talk to your banker in order to apply. Jumping back to the sheet, for the sign-up bonuses, it's all 60,000 points for $5,000 to spend for the public offers. For the Goldman Sachs one, we don't really know what the offer is. Looking at the year one expected value, you're going to come out ahead if you value the benefits. If you value everything at its fair price, you're getting about $150 in value, so they're paying you to have the card. Even if you don't value any of these perks, maybe you have to discount them a bit, you're probably still going to break even from these other benefits, most likely at least, and then on top of that, you're getting that sign-up bonus, which makes it a no-brainer in the first year. If you do want to make sure that it makes sense, we have calculators for the Platinum card, for the year one value, expected value for it. It doesn't include some of these other special benefits, but you can easily add that into your number at the end, at the bottom of the calculator. And again, I'll link to that down below, either in the blog post or the description box. Expected value for year two and onwards is also pretty good if you value the perks, so you're paying about $50 to keep the card. For year two and onwards, you're paying about $50 to keep the card, and it just really depends on how you value the benefits of the base card, any retention offers you might have, and also any of the superpowers that you might be eligible for that we're going to talk about now. Before we dive into the superpowers, if you are someone who wants to learn more about American Express cards and you want to support our channel, pretty easy way to do that would be to use the links on our sites or the links in the description box down below. So normally for authorized users, you're paying $175 for up to 3 of them. So whether you add 1, 2, or 3, you're still paying that $175. Optimal strategy being that you add 3 people. For any additional after the 3, you're paying $175. One of the really big benefits of the Morgan Stanley card is that you're going to get your first authorized user free. The next 3 are going to be $175, and then $175 for the 4th one, or technically the 5th one in this case. Depending on how you're playing the game, this can be extremely valuable because you have an authorized user that isn't paying that big $550 annual fee, and you're not paying $175 out of pocket in order to add them. For some people, that might already be $175 benefits. For me, I don't really have a player 2 that can benefit from the authorized user card, but I do have relatives. So I actually added my mom as an authorized user for this card, mostly because I'm not paying anything, so it makes sense to do it, and also because she's traveling in Hong Kong and there's a Centurion lounge there. Yes, there's also priority pass and stuff, but I figured it would be an option if she wanted it. Your mileage may vary, but I think it's a pretty interesting perk if you have a player 2 and you don't want to double up too much on the same benefits. Looking at the multipliers, there is nothing really unique here because they all earn the same thing. In the past, there was a Mercedes-Benz card which earned a bit more for those purchases, but not really in play here. Diving into the superpowers, this is where it gets super interesting. A bit of me hesitates to call this a superpower, but I think it does work out pretty well. For the regular vanilla one, you get more retention offers. If we jump over to Flyer Talk and take a look at the thread for retention offers, we can see lists and lists and lists of people who have retention offers for the regular card. Whether you want to take these offers is obviously a question, and whether you get a good offer is a question, but for a lot of people, it's pretty easy to get a retention offer for that card. Mandy, for example, ended up getting offered either $300 or 30,000 points for doing nothing. You can typically get a retention offer every other year with American Express for that card, so if you get one in 2019, you probably have to pay the full price for the next year, but then the year after that, you can ask for a retention offer again. On the flip side, if you look into other cards, you don't really see that many data points. There's obviously a few factors that can be in play here. It could be that there's less people with those cards, so less data points in general, given the makeup. But given that this is also Flyer Talk, I feel like there's a lot of people who probably have those premium cards. I'm not saying you can't get a retention offer for the other cards, I think it's just a lot less likely. Moving on to the Ameriprise card, its main superpower is that you're going to get 5,000 MR points after every $20,000 in spend. If you value those points at 3 cents per point, that's about $150 in value. So 3 cents is already pretty aggressive, but it's not really that valuable because $150 divided by $20,000, you're getting about 0.7. It's a superpower, but to me, it's not really something that I would activate. For the Schwab one, there's two big superpowers. The first one is that you can get a Schwab appreciation bonus, where you're going to get $100 for $250 in holdings, or $200 for $1 million in holdings. This is going to be measured when you open the account and also at every anniversary annually of you paying that annual fee. This can definitely be pretty helpful if you are in that mid-level range, so that 250 range, and it doesn't need to be cash. It could be your other investments. That's going to be fine. The other big benefit is that you can transfer your MR points at 1 to 1.25 cents per point in order to cash them out into your brokerage. I think if you're someone who doesn't really care about travel, if you just want extra cash back, if you want to invest it and roll it forward, this is going to be one of the best choices. The final one is going to be the Morgan Stanley one. We've already talked about the free authorized user, but there's a few other benefits. So you can transfer at a 1-to-1 rate to Morgan Stanley, which doesn't really make sense since Schwab transfers at a better rate, but just something to be aware of. Another underwhelming benefit is that you can get $500 for every $100,000 in spend, so about an extra 0.5% back. So not too interesting for those two ones, but the last one is super interesting. Morgan Stanley has a $550 engagement bonus for people who have reserved status for the Premier Cash Management System. This basically means that you are not paying an annual fee for the Morgan Stanley card if you fall into this specific group. There are some requirements there, so it probably won't make sense for everyone, but it is something that's very interesting towards the late game. In order to qualify for reserved status, your household has to have a minimum of $1 million in eligible assets. Looking at the terms, it sounds like anyone who holds the basic card and who lives in a household who qualifies for this status would end up getting the $550 bonus. So I'm not sure if it's just limited to one person. If you fall under this, I would recommend double checking just to make sure before you act on something, but it seems pretty interesting because you could be in a household which has 2 parents as well as 2 kids who are adults who would qualify, and the whole family effectively cannot pay annual fees on each of their cards. So you're getting about $2,200 in value there. I know some people are going to say that people who are in that asset level might not care about saving $2,000, but I feel like most people I know, maybe it's a tech thing or maybe it's just people I know in general, tends to be relatively cheap even if they are in that asset level. So in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, $1 million is what you pay for a starter home. And there's people who I know who have been acquired who still travel, but they're not flying first class every time. Unless there's a specific deal where they're paying $1,000 or maybe $1,500 or $2,000, they're not plopping off $25,000 for flights. $2,000 is still $2,000, especially if you just have money in the market and it saves you money on that annual fee. One of the other ways to qualify for this reserve status is by spending $100,000 on their debit card. Doesn't really make sense to me in most cases, but there might be some weird circumstances where it does. Looking at the bottom, there's the other benefits that you get of American Express Platinum Card, but we're not really going to cover that because there's not really that big differences there. Diving into some FAQ questions, the first one is whether you're going to be eligible for multiple of these bonuses. So these are all considered separate products by American Express, so you can technically get all of them. One thing to be aware of though is that in the past there are some weird data points about people who've gotten the other cards and then get the vanilla regular card who don't end up getting that bonus or end up getting it clawed back. So if you do want to de-risk, I'd get the vanilla card first. Should I get all of these cards? I think it really depends on the game that you're playing. If you're someone who doesn't want to get too many cards, if you're only looking to have 5 cards or something, then probably not, and probably just pick the card that makes the most sense for you of the group. If you're someone who has a 5 or 10 card base and you're bonus hunting, then it's not that uncommon to get each of these cards, and you can space it out by 1 a year or 1 every 2 years or something. That way you collect a lot of these bonuses. If you go through all of them, then from the sign-up bonuses, you're getting 240,000 points for $20,000 of spend. Looking at a good example of ANA First Class, which we just talked about a few days ago, that gets you about 3 round-trip flights. So you, your significant other, and then grab a few more points for your kid or for your mom or whoever else. On the flip side, if you want to do cash back, that's going to be $3,000 if you cash it out through Schwab at that 1.25 rates. The order I would do it in would be the vanilla one, the Ameriprise one, and then the Morgan Stanley and Schwab one, swappable depending on which one is more valuable for you in the game that you're playing. Schwab being more for cash back, and then Morgan Stanley being for high net worth individuals and families. If I had to rank them, I would think the Ameriprise one is at the bottom, and then the 3, you could make arguments for any of them depending on the game you're playing. Retention offers for people who are relatively lower income or who just don't have as many assets yet, and then people in the middle are probably Schwab, and then high income is Morgan Stanley. In case you're wondering, they're all the same card, they just have different logos on the top of it. So this is the Charles Schwab one. Again, if you do want to learn more about American Express cards and you want to support our channel, we have links on our sites and also in the description box down below. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you guys have any questions. My question for you guys is, what are your thoughts on these cards? How would you rank them? What would be your play style if you would have to go through them, or if you would only pick one of them? Let me and the community know down below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps us out. If you know anyone else who benefit from what we just talked about, feel free to share the video with them because it's probably going to help them out. But otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.